Welcome, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in to another Solarplaza webinar. I'm really excited today to be hosting the webinar, the Agri-PV, Harvesting the Opportunity of Solar and Farming. We have two really knowledgeable speakers, really excited to hear what they will bring. I will briefly introduce to you the agenda for today before I give the word to our speakers. The agenda, I will say a little bit more about the rationale of this webinar and the follow-up to our upcoming Agri-PV event. Introduce also who we are, Solarplaza, for those of you that don't know us yet. Then we will listen to the presentations by Tamara and Sasha. During these presentations, you can already ask some questions in the question box in the side of the screen. So we will, after these presentations, have a Q&A, and then we will round up the webinar, after which you also receive the instructions for obtaining the slides. So a little bit more about us, Solarplaza. We are your go-to platform if you want to stay on top of the sustainable energy transition, because it's really our business to accelerate this sustainable energy transition. We've been doing this for quite some time now, since 2004. And what we do is really the sharing of knowledge and building a solar PV network, mainly through our events. As you can see, we have a track record of more than 175 events. And we really have a global mindset in doing so, from Chile to Australia and from the US to Japan. And in our database and in our network, we have over 60,000 solar PV professionals. And we always try to engage and to inform everybody of the latest developments, not just through our events, but also through newsletters, resources, or webinars like today's webinar. We've not been sitting idle during the Corona crisis. We've opened also a Solarplaza consultancy within Solarplaza, which is your go-to platform for market entry and market penetrations. So as you can see, there are 3 services really aiming at expanding your solar activities, at connecting with new partners, and also with positioning your brand in new markets. So if you would like to see more about the services that we offer, you can see the website in the bottom of the screen. So a little bit more about the background for this webinar. So on the 21st of September, we will host an Agri-PV event in Amsterdam, a conference. It's going to be our first Agri-PV conference, which we plan to make a reoccurring event, and it's a really exciting time, because PV is very rapidly emerging in the solar world, but also really as a tool to make agriculture more sustainable and climate resilient, as we will see also today in the presentations. The focus of the conference will be really in zooming in on what services does Agri-PV have for agriculture and solar, what are some of the business models, and we will really look also at case studies and what does Agri-PV hold for the future, what is the future outlook. It's not too late to still get a ticket, so I really hope for those of you among us that this webinar will trigger you to know more about the conference, to grow your network within Agri-PV professionals, and that we can welcome you on the 21st of September in Amsterdam, or the 20th when we have a nice pre-conference dinner in Amsterdam. Some last practical notes before I give the word to the speakers, before I introduce the speakers. So as I said, we have a question box in the side. Feel free already during the presentation to answer your questions, either general questions, or you can also put between brackets if you want to ask it to a presenter specifically. And then after the presentations, we will moderate and make sure that as many questions as possible are being answered. Also use this question box if you have technical issues, and we will try to help you out as quickly as possible. And as I mentioned, the presentation slides and recordings will be made available to you after the presentation. So a little bit more about our speakers. So firstly, I would like to introduce Sasha Krause-Dunker, who is the CEO of Next to Sun. Hi, Sasha. Really innovative. Welcome, Sasha. Nexuson is a really innovative company with Sasha will tell more about the vertical bifacial concept, and Sasha is working on the company business development. He has a track record as a consultant and an interim manager, setting up businesses of different sizes. So really exciting to have Sasha here as one of the speakers. Then I'm also very happy. Thank you, Sasha. Also very happy to host Tamara today, Tamara Bretzel. Tamara is, hi Tamara, agrivoltaics researcher at Fraunhofer, one of the most renowned institutes in solar research with more than 1,200 employees. And Tamara works in the Fraunhofer Institute for agrivoltaics data structuring. And as you can see, also with a great track record specifically in Agri-PV, worked on the EU call proposal for PV greenhouses and more experience in solar research. So very excited as well to hear about Tamara's work in Agri-PV. We will start the presentation with Tamara's contribution, but before we do so, we would like to also know a little bit more from the audience. Where do you come from? So we will now have 30 seconds to answer the poll. You can click on the poll in the screen. So we would like to ask you, what is your professional background? Because we could already see in the registration list that there were a variety of nationalities. People were coming from different parts of the world, but we also saw quite some variety of professional backgrounds. Some researchers, some engineers. So we would really like to know a bit more about where do you come from? What is your background? And what makes up the audience for today? So we see that the majority is from the PV world, I would say overwhelming majority, and then quite some developers, investors, and EPCs, so some asset owners, but also on a second place, researchers, consultants, and advisors, and manufacturers and service providers. But I'm also very happy to have some attendees from the agricultural background, because I think it's all about bridging the two worlds. So with that, I would like to give the word to Tamara. Thank you for answering. And we will now also give the controls to Tamara.
Yep, it works. Thank you very much, Ramses, and to Solarplaza in general for the setup, for the preparation, and for taking care of us. Thank you very much. Before I start with my presentation, I have also briefly a question or poll that we prepared of, because it's a general interest for me as well, how familiar you are already with the topic of Agri-PV. So whether you're not familiar at all, but very curious, that's why you're here at the webinar, you know already a little bit and you want to learn more with that webinar, for example, you're familiar with it and you apply already it, or you're absolutely an expert and you know about it and yeah, want to compare a little bit here. So please give your answers. It would be very interesting because then I also can say what the questions will be about more or less. Yeah. Maybe we have some answers. Yes. So yeah, the majority already knows a bit about it and wants to learn more. Maybe some more can contemplate, but I think that's a final answer, right? And many are familiar with it and some are already experts, but also very happy that not all of them are familiar with it and want to know a lot more. So yeah, let's dive into it. I will present in behalf of the Fraunhofer Institute of Solar Energy Systems. We will introducing a bit of agrivoltaics that might be a game changer for the energy transition towards carbon neutrality in Europe, for example. And in the background, for example, you can already see one of our systems situated in Geelsdorf, Germany, where we have Agri-PV above a orchard system. I hope I can go forward. Yes. So the table of content I will talk about is what we monitored so far for international agrivoltaics developments and classifications. I will briefly dive into our first pilot plant in Hegelbach, some very brief information about the economic feasibility and the technical potential in Germany we monitored and surveyed, and some current research and development projects we're doing internationally. Okay, who is the Fraunhofer Institute? ISE. We were founded in 1981 by our Prof. Adolf Götzberger, and we're located in Freiburg in Germany, one of the, well, I'd say the sunniest city in Germany. And we have over 1,200 employees, as Ramses already said. We are the largest research institute in Europe, and we're known for it by that. And our research focus is mainly in energy conversion, efficiency, distribution, storage, and to contribute to a broad application of technologies that can help to the energy transition, as explained. And we in our group Agri-Voltaics, we are about 50 plus employees, and we're largely growing because of the large business potential and the market influence of it so far. So let's get started with the first topic, the international agrivoltaics development and classifications that we tried to establish. So what we monitored for the agrivoltaics development from the idea back then until today. The first idea we saw was also from our founder of the institute, Mr. Götzberger, and his partner Zastro. They had a publication in 1981 about the agrivoltaic idea. And what we noticed in the EU, that the first agrivoltaic systems were situated in France and Italy, for example, in 2011, were the first systems implemented. We monitored that in 2013 in Japan, the first governmental funding scheme got implemented. In China in 2015, we had the very first large-scale agrivoltaic system, which we're talking about above 10 hectares of land. In Germany, we had the first agrivoltaic systems in the years between 2013 and 16. In 2017, we monitored the governmental funding scheme, and we tried to monitor the installed capacity worldwide so far, which we assume to be around 14 gigawatt peak. And we're looking forward to 2023 because there's the new governmental funding scheme in Germany will be implemented. So let's dive into some facilities that we tried to track. There are many countries involved, like I said already. Germany, for example, with many research systems, but also some commercial systems already existing, and they emerge even more. In Italy and France, we have a large deployment as well in Japan, especially with the Ministry of Agriculture, Forest and Fishery. Also in Egypt and USA, for example, in F and G. Maybe I can use again this pointer, laser pointer, there you can see it. So F is situated in Egypt and G is in the US. It's also both research-oriented systems, but we also have in Taiwan some greenhouse systems already monitored. Some more agrivoltaic systems are again in France and Italy. Here is ours, K in Hegelbach. Some more in China, which is the large-scale one I already explained or told you. And some more in Chile, China, Germany again, and Korea as well. And all these systems are very different, and we try to track them at least a little bit and get the most information or the most important informations from it. But we also track that more facilities are planned in countries with large GHI, global horizontal irradiation potential. So how much sun is coming there, which are in Vietnam, Israel, Mali, India, Mexico, US, and so on. So yeah, what we tracked again is about 14 gigawatt peak. It should be 2021. of installed agrivoltaic capacity worldwide. And like I said, we tried to classify these large varieties of agrivoltaic systems, and we tried to do that with our DIN spec 91434. That is a norm, tries to classify these specific technologies, and we try to deploy 2 different categories here, which is number 1, category 1 in picture A, and category 2 in picture B and C. And these categories differ because we have in category 1 an overhead PV installation above the agricultural usage underneath. So we're talking about a vertical clearance of 2.1 meters. So we have a farming underneath the agrivoltaic system, we say. In category 2, we're talking about an interspace PV installation with a vertical clearance underneath 2.1 meters. And we're having farming mainly in between the PV installation, or we say we have a farming between the rows of agrivoltaic systems. Yeah, so what we have for these different types of categories, we have typical use cases identified, what we saw in these different agrivoltaic systems, which is 1A, for example, permanent and perennial crops. We have single year and long-term crops. We have permanent grassland with mowing or with pasture. And we also give some examples what can be grown in these different types of agrivoltaic systems, which is also applied for category 2. Yeah, so also in our DIN spec, we try to monitor what different types of or structural system types agrivoltaic has already. We try to identify them with this graph here with an open and closed systems. With the closed systems, we're talking about PV greenhouses, as I already explained. In the grayish area, what we see here is our agrivoltaic applications that are not in the strictest sense an agrivoltaic application, because we're interested in the agricultural yield that we can monitor. And in these cases, for park buildings, for example, we cannot monitor how much different it would be to the reference field before we implemented APV agrivoltaics. So what we concentrate here are the open and closed ones, PV greenhouses, overhead PV, and interspace PV, as I explained, as a structure. We have typical module tilt tracking. So we have tracking, we have non-tracking, we have fixed system, we have dual axis tracking. Yeah, we also try to track typical applications underneath it and formed it as names of permanent grassland, arable farming, horticulture, and aquaculture, and gave some typical agriculture products underneath and some examples where it is applied. So the core criteria or requirements we also set in our DIN spec is that we should have and guarantee an agricultural yield of at least 66% to the reference field, which means without the PV installation. So what we are really interested is to guarantee the agricultural production underneath the PV production, because we try to combine both. We shall not neglect one of these. That's the main use. And this is why we also implemented the agricultural use concept, that the agricultural usability of that area is, after the implementing of PV, still guaranteed. So we try to find a number of loss of land that we have due to the installation of PV that shall be not larger than 10% for the first category, the overhead PV, and not more than 15% of the category 2, the interspace PV. Yeah, so the agrivoltaic system has to be adapted to the agricultural needs as well. So we shall have underneath the system adequate light availability and homogeneity, as well as the water availability. And this will be in addition it should be avoiding soil erosion and damage due to the installation. So some benefits that we gathered so far from our systems or other systems that we try to track is that we can collect the rainwater after at the site, at the PV installation for irrigation purposes, that can be used underneath, which would be about 20% for the demand as irrigation. We have a possible reduction of wind erosion, which is a positive effect. We also can use the PV substructure as an application for protective nets or films that we need for some perennial crops, such as orchards, where we can see here, for example. So we have these nets and we substituted them with the PV. We also optimize the light availability through tracking PV systems, which means we also have a higher light homogeneity. We also have a higher efficiency of the modules that we monitored because of the convective cooling of the grown crop underneath. So the higher the temperature of the PV, the lower the efficiency of the PVs, and the crops underneath it prevent it a little bit due to convective cooling. We also have a higher efficiency if we apply bifacial modules above the crops, which use the light of both sides of the PV modules to generate electricity. And yeah, this can be also an advantage. Next. So now I'm diving into the pilot plant, Agri-PV Solar, which is situated in Hegelbach, near Lake Constance. Here is a picture of it. We have a vertical clearance of 8 meters and a total height of 8, a capacity of 195 kilowatt peak. It has around 3.4 hectares. We have 15 modules, module rows, sorry. We have no tracking here. We have bifacial modules, which are double class from Solar World. We have a yearly production of 256 megawatt hours, what we tracked in 2020. And it is used for either self-consumption of a farm nearby. It has also grid supply, and we have a feed-in tariff. So it means we feed in the electricity we produce into the net, into the grid. And the crop rotations, we monitor it in summer 16 and 17, also 17 and 18, are clovergrass, celery, potato, and winter wheat. So here's an example picture of what we have. We have here the PV installation above the field, which we call APV, and we have the reference site on the site. And we also have these microclimate stations where we try to monitor the crop growth, the water consumption, and so on. What we identified with that pilot plant, as well as a prior result, is the shade tolerance of the most relevant crops in Germany. So we have located them depending on the species and type, how adequate they can be applied in an agrivoltaic system. So 0 means we have no benefit nor a disadvantage from it, from the PV installation, which is cereal, radish, leek, celery. But the type of crops that can benefit are in the plus section, and the ones that might have a negative effect of it are in the minus section. This was one of our previous results. The main results we gathered are from potato yield, for example, in the years 2017 and 2018. We also gathered the bulb diameter of the potatoes, which are tracked in these diameters. And what we saw in, for example, 2017 of the potato yield, that it reduced by 18% from the agrivoltaic installation compared to the reference field on the site. But in 2018, we monitored a crop yield increase of 11% due to the high heat in this year and the low water availability. So in upcoming years, with climate crisis and climate change, we might have a good chance here with this implementation to lower the effect on the agricultural yield. So this is one of our results for APV Solar. Okay, next. And we also gathered a parameter which is called the land equivalent ratio that you normally use for agricultural use. We try to collect this for the year 2018. So it comes together to 186%. This accounts to, how do we measure it? It means we have 103% of potato yield. This is coming from 100% potato yield that we normally have on the reference yield, plus the yield that we increased in 2018, which was the 11%, minus the 8% that we lose because of the PV installation above it. So we have a potato yield of 103% in this sense. And this is the thing about it. We have an electricity yield of 83% that we additionally have to the potato yield, and this accounts up to 186%. This is how we accounted the land equivalent ratio in 2018. In this sense, agrivoltaics can help to solve the conflict of land use, what we have in mainly all European countries. So we increase the area efficiency, at least for in Germany, of about 60 to 90% with this LER conflict, LER number. And it has therefore a large potential in areas and regions where the land is scarce, and we have arid and or semi-arid climate zones. Nope. So now I'm coming to the third section, the economic feasibility, technical potential that we gathered in Germany. For the capital expenditures, short CapEx, we monitored it for different types of PV systems, which are mainly ground-mounted PV, agrivoltaic grassland, agrivoltaic arable, and agrivoltaics horticultural systems. Here, the main important prices that we gathered are modules, of course, the substructure, and the cost sides for preparation and installation. So meaning this position, the substructure, and the surface preparation and installation, which are for all four types very high, but also different, as you can see. For the operating costs, we saw, so we have here in the dark the OPEX and in the light version the CAPEX, and it changes also for the four different types of agricultural use. PV use, sorry. The most expensive ones are the provision of space, so the leisure of the land, but also high costs we have for cleaning and maintenance due to the agricultural use underneath agrivoltaics. Therefore, the OPEX is coming quite high. For the levelized cost of efficiency for agrivoltaics, we have around 8.15 euro cent per kilowatt hours. Compared this to the ground-mounted PV, we are still a bit higher due to the higher substructure that we use. The system is therefore more expensive, but compared to the roof PV, so the building integrated PV, we are lower than 11 euro cent per kilowatt hours compared to the agrivoltaic systems. This was about the economics. Now I'm diving into the technical potentials. We tried to gather some information concerning Germany, and the technical potential considers only the technical, infrastructural, and ecological constraints here. So Agri-PV is a part of the integrated photovoltaics. And for Germany, this area, so the agro land, I say now, we have the largest potential according to our measurements. The next one would be the building integrated PV. Afterwards coming the floating and so on. So Agri-PV has a large potential from this measurement due to the high agricultural land that we have next to settlement and forestry, which is accounting to 16.7 million hectares. So this means we have a 47% of agricultural sector in the total area of Germany. And we consider only 17% of that agricultural sector for APV, agrivoltaics installations, due to the technical constraints, as I explained. We also do not account grassland, reserves, protected agricultural land, and wetlands, therefore. So this together accounts to the 1,700 gigawatt we see here as a technical potential for agrivoltaics installation. So compare this to the carbon neutrality aim that we have in Germany so far for 2030 or 2045 is with the new paper 215 gigawatts that shall be implemented for PV in 2030 in Germany, or 400 to 500 gigawatts for the year 2045. This is the aims, and what we see here is for the aim in 2030, we only have about 0.5% of the agricultural year that is needed, therefore, for the agrivoltaic installation, and we have around 3.4 to 4.5 of agricultural land that is needed to contemplate the 400 to 500 gigawatt aims in 2045. These were some numbers for the technical potentials. In Germany, we didn't do it so far for Europe, unfortunately. That is very land specific, and therefore I will go further to the research and development projects we're doing currently. We have the first orchard pilot in Germany still running. We had a budget here of 1.5 million euros. We have 8 different apple species, and we have several different technologies here. We have different semi-transparent PV modules applied above the orchard, which are tracked or non-tracked. And like I explained in the previous slides, we try to substitute the nets that we normally use against hazel. So some weather conditions that are not wished here. For the next one, we have APV MAGA, that is short for agrivoltaics for Mali and Gambia. We have, we try to apply sustainable electricity production according to the water, energy, food nexus. The project is also still running since 2020. The topics here are mainly rainwater harvesting, socioeconomic barriers that together in these countries, and as I said, the water, energy, food nexus. And yeah, the main system idea here was a bit different compared to Germany, for example, because we try to concentrate on the rainwater harvesting if rain is coming. That's why we have this V-shape oriented structure of the PV to gather the most of the water. So the water runs down into the middle, and then it is easier to harvest together. And yeah, that was one of the ideas we tried to implement here. So we have the technology of the V-shaped PV modules. It is therefore also simple and robust. And yeah, next projects I want to share with you is the shrimps. As you already heard, it's about aquaculture, about the bioflake, so type of feed to the shrimps, and we try to have shrimps at the end. So that's the agricultural use. So the topic here is the solar aquaculture habitat as a resource-efficient and integrated multi-layer product system. The project is running since 2019 until 2023. The installed capacity will be 100 kilowatt peak, and the technologies we apply here are different shading rates underneath this couple, this shield, and we try to find out the corresponding effects on the shrimp production underneath it. And yeah, the shrimp projects itself will be situated in Vietnam. And yeah, project trying to implement the site in the next years. APV 2.0 is a project that is coupling the plant and the PV production in adaptive systems, meaning it tries to adapt to the climate change conditions, and the project time is until 2025. It got prolonged. On this side, you can also see this V-shape integration. This is a visualization. So far, it does not exist yet, this pilot site, but it will be near Jülich in the Rhine Valley. And the topics here are the plant respondents under the agrivoltaic system, to have an optimized tracking because a plant needs at different times of the day, different solar radiance, different water conditions. So we try to optimize that via tracking. And it has an aim of regional economic potential and in these adaptive systems, as I explained. These will be 3 different sites, if I remember correctly, with a total capacity of 450 kilowatt peak. The technologies we apply here, like I said, is to develop a custom tracking system and algorithm for the photosynthesis rate of the different plants in connection to digital twins. And we also track the radiation and the PV yield here, of course. The last project I want to share with you, I'm also into and working for it, is SASMET House, which is short for Sustainability and Competitiveness of Mediterranean Greenhouse and Intensive Horticulture. This is a EU Prima call, and it is still running since 2 years now. And this is completely new. These pictures I'm sharing with you now. Well, for example, the tomatoes and paprika we have here are already a bit higher. But what we implemented here is this checkerboard system of these PV. And we also have a reference area on that side that, to gather information on the crop yield. The aim of the general project is to have an automated sustainable greenhouse system. So it is not only about PV, it is also about advanced technologies like AI, adaptive energy systems, also with the concept of PV together. So how to integrate the PV also for an optimal growth condition for the plants that we investigate here, that are tomato, lettuce, and paprika. Yep, that was it so far about me and the Fraunhofer ISA and what we do. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand over the word again to Ramses, I think. I hope I wasn't over the time.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Tamara. That was a great, first, I think the classification system and some examples that gave a really good understanding of the different types of Agri-PV, illustrated by some really nice examples. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Great, and now I would like to give the floor to Sasha, who will dive a bit more in depth on a specific type of application of Agri-PV with a really innovative approach of next to sun. So I'm really happy, Sasha, to give the floor to you now and to continue with the second part of the presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ramses, and all the team for the invitation, and also Tamara for the interesting presentation. I will now have a deeper look into a very special system of agrivoltaics we developed. That's a vertical bifacial technology. And yeah, I think one important advantage we directly see in the picture over here is that it takes very less space. It's vertical, so of course it's by far the lowest ground coverage possible, which leaves a lot of space for Agri-PV, for agricultural use, as we see in the picture, with even huge machinery. So first, a short overview how this looks like. I didn't even knew that it was animated, but nice. Yeah, what we see is we have simply the post. We work with ramming posts, so no concrete or something else. We have the solar modules mounted in between. And we have a huge space which is usable for agricultural management. What we see from our experience is around 90%. I think what is quite important, even if let's say the agricultural use is around 90% of the ground compared to 10 meters, we use more or less 9 meters, for example. We still have the additional space is not really lost, but it's usable for ecological enhancement. I will have a look at it in a later part of my presentation. So yeah, what we see for agriculture for the PV use is indeed a huge potential. I think Tamara already explained, since we do not really take away the land from the agricultural use. It covers less than 1% of the ground, this vertical installation. We have no influence in the water supply on the agricultural ground, and we have only a small change in radiation, which also was already described by Tamara, that it's can also be a positive influence, and we indeed have some data on this, especially in dry years. It can even be accelerating the growth of the plants, since we have less dry land. And as I already said, around 90% we can even use with, let's say, heavy machinery. What we see here in the picture is 9.2 meter mower in between of a 10 meter system. This was, I think it was a challenge, but it was possible. It's possible to use it with GPS technology in between the rows. Without any problems. So if we are looking at the crops, we see a huge variety of crops which fit with this technology. On the one hand, it's grains like wheat, barley, or for example also rice, but also different others like potatoes or beets or carrots, and also legumes, for example. So there is a huge possibility to create different fruit steps which can be combined in an appropriate way. Of course, it's not all. If we're talking about sunflowers or corn, it makes no sense, since in summer there would be the crops would be higher than the vertical system, which of course makes no sense. But as I said, we see plenty other potential applications. So what was, let's say, from the PV perspective, our idea of the vertical system? I need to say that this article already addressed it, and but we learned later on. So when we started our development, also at that time, 2030, we didn't knew about this investigation, but that's what we already see. It could be also from the PV perspective an advantage to work with vertical installation instead of fixed tilted south-oriented one. And yeah, here we see a map from this paper I couldn't recommend, where the lighter ones is the areas where vertical is better than fixed tilted south. And that's also what we see from the data we already collected. So in these areas, we have a lot of advantage from, especially from the albedo, but also from, let's say, yeah, physical parts as the angel from where the light comes and all and so on. And what we see is that, for example, North America, but also Europe, especially in the northern one, is yeah, better off. Sorry, it's a dark one. It's vertical, not the light one. So another very important aspect we see is the production profile. I think that's more or less all around the world already the same, but here we have some data from Germany. On the right hand side we see a typical PV production. I think this is from last year, but I just checked today, it's exactly the same picture. We have always this peak production at noon, which decreases the prices for electricity. A year ago, even to negative level. This is yeah, a problem from the we currently do not have in Germany, but okay, this we all know the reasons why. But yeah, so one of our most important advantages we see is this anti-cyclic production profile we see on the left-hand side. So if we mount a vertical installation with east-west orientation, we see that we have peak production in the morning hours when the light, the sun goes directly on the modules, and also in the afternoon hours. At noon, we also have some production, but only from indirect irradiation. It's about 20–25%. And that's what we see in the orange line. And this is, yeah, very good. Yeah, it works very good in addition to the conventional PV. Yeah, and I think this is really a topic from our perspective, which really is not so in the focus so far for Agri-PV, but can be can have a very important role. Tamara already had the question regarding is Agri-PV a game changer? Especially due to this topic, we see the potential for game-changing technology, since we can switch in electricity production from PV in the morning and the evening hours, which means we can use the grid much more efficient. Yeah, we can also accelerate energy transition, since the bottleneck, the grid, can be used much more efficient by at vertical installation, a part of the conventional ones. And also due to the wider availability of electricity, of directly produced PV electricity, of course, also the need for storage would be a little bit reduced. And this, I think, are quite important aspects, which can yeah, really be a game changer also in terms of energy transition. This is, of course, connected to the vertical technology, especially, but there is also a direct connection to Agri-PV, since vertical, of course, needs a lot of space in between the rows to avoid shadowing, and Agri-PV exactly needs the same. Yeah? So this combination, vertical and agri, is working very well, and gives the opportunity also from the PV side to have these grid stabilizing effects, and also yeah, additional yields from higher prices. Yeah, that's what we also see in the figure, we see that the morning and the evening, the prices on the energy exchange are much higher. And we can also harvest these higher prices for more valuable electricity production. So the third aspect I already mentioned was the ecological enhancement. We will see some pictures later on, since we can combine these two aspects, agriculture and PV, with a third aspect with ecological enhancement, especially if we have huge monocultures. You would have these, I always call them solar hedges. Every 10 meter, as I already explained, we will leave some space on the left and on the right hand side from the module, simply due to the reason that with heavy machinery, you need some space on both sides. It's not very much due to GPS technology, but there is still space left. And yeah, for us, a typical installation would be a 10-meter row distance with 9-meter agricultural use in between. So we have more or less 1 meter without huge impact from the PV installation, which can be used agricultural for ecological enhancement. It can be also used with grass, flower stripes, stone, wood, and different installations to increase the structures for ecological enhancement. So we see also some additional benefits, especially in terms of cleaning, for example. Of course, the vertical installation has the advantage that you will have less dust on the modules, since it normally falls down from our installations we already have. Our experience is that we did not clean it at all so far, and it works very well. And another aspect is, of course, the snowy regions. Since from snow we have a quite increasing albedo, with much higher indirect irradiation, which leads to really boost in energy production. So snowy February day or so normally is the absolute peak in the yearly production. Also due to an effect Tamara already mentioned, the low temperature leads to an increasing performance of the modules itself, combined with a high albedo, is really a boost for energy production with this vertical system. Some aspects from costs. Okay, currently, let's say it's the market is a little bit difficult, but that's what we have seen over the last years, that we already were able to reduce the cost per installed kilowatt below 700 euros. And so we are getting more and more competitive, even with conventional ones, especially due to the higher value of the energy produced. So some quotes on the system. I will go through it. I think that's not very important, but maybe some samples we already tried with this technology is on the one hand hay production in our largest Agri-PV plant in Donau-Eschingen. It's 4 megawatts, 40 hectares, and this is of course working quite well, as we see. With this, as I already explained, mowing system with 9.2 meter in between, so high production works very well. We also did silage production in the same plant, which is no difference from the technology. I think as the used machinery is more or less the same, and that worked also quite well. yeah, here also we have in this plant already planted some peas and harvested them. These pictures are quite new as from this year. And yeah, also here we see that it works quite well with a big harvesting machine in between the rows. And I think what also the picture shows is this stripe of grass in between for the ecological enhancement. Here a new picture from Japan, where we already installed some plants and plan some more this year together with our partner Luxembourg. And yeah, this solar sharing is also yeah, a quite interesting approach, and we are working on there on several projects as well. Another picture from France with even bigger machinery. I think they have 12 or 13 meters in between. I think it's 30 meters in between the rows, and yeah, we see this massive harvester with I think it's around 12 meters. So really huge machinery can be used, and we see that also the wheat grows quite well in between the rows. Lentils is also from France, which worked yeah, in the same way in another plant. And also, so what we see is, I think, a huge variety of potential applications on the agricultural side. Potato was also something which was already used in Austria, where we also have some smaller applications, and we are quite confident that we will see much more in the future. So here is the last application, which is let's say belongs to the vertical family, but it's quite different. This is simply a fence we also designed from our system, since of course it's quite easy. If we already have a vertical installation, we can use it as a fence. What we, for example, also did now in the first installation for a PV plant we are currently building, that the fence around the PV plant is also a PV plant. So we installed it we installed a solar fence around the PV plant. And what we see here is an agricultural application, in this case for a chicken farm. And I think I have one more from Ireland with yeah, for a milk farm with cows, where also the yeah, the PV can be used as a fence around all the cows. So I think this is it from my side. Thank you for the attention. What I wanted to add maybe is that yeah, this technology is open for every developer, yeah, whoever is interested in developing this type of technology. We have an own company for mounting systems, which provides the system and supports everybody who wanted to install such a system.
Great. Thanks so much, Sasha. Thanks so much for this great presentation. Super happy also. Also very happy to have you as a partner of the event. Next to Sam will also be there at the Solarplaza conference. So a great opportunity to hear more and to speak to some of the experts. And so will Fraunhofer be. They will also be at the event to answer all the questions. Talking about questions, we do have a lot of questions. I think we do still have some time to answer 3 or 4 questions. But if your questions are unanswered, I would say a great opportunity to ask them at the event as well. I would like to start with one question to Tamara. There has been a question about the potato yield when you compare the 2017 decrease and the 2018 increase. Has the study been continued from 2018 onwards?
There were several other studies, but not on the site. So we only tracked 17, 18, but we also tried to track, of course, the other facilities that we have. This is quite a challenge because we're not situated at the place, so we need someone else, mainly from agricultural institutes, to do that for as well. In this case, we had Hochschule Hohenheim to do it. Yeah, so it's still under research, as I explained. They do quite a lot in France, for example, and other research institutes in RAE, for example. But yeah, that's our results so far.
Okay, super. And then a question to Sasha. Would it make sense to install modules partly with the main front side to the west and partly to the east?
We indeed exactly do this. Maybe you saw it at some points from the color of the modules, since they were slightly different. And we indeed did exactly this one, simply to balance the peak load. Since the former modules we installed, this was N-type heterojunction, not N-type, it was not heterojunction. Was around 80% on the backside. Yeah, so the backside peak would be a little bit smaller. Currently, from the heterojunction module, this difference decreases. So also the backside delivers more than, let's say, 90%. So it loses a little bit of importance, but we still do.
Okay, super. Then perhaps also another question for Sasha. So the requirements for PV modules, are there special requirements that modules have to fulfill in order to be suitable to be called an Agri-PV project? So for example, are there any certificates which these models need?
Yes, there are. I think the most important topic is indeed the backside efficiency, which leads to the cell technology heterojunction, I think, which is currently getting more and more the market standard. We also work with frameless modules, which makes a lot of sense in terms of shading and also to reduce inefficiency losses, but that can be provided by different module manufacturers if you buy in megawatt sizes.
Okay, super, thanks a lot. And then I think we have one last question. Unfortunately, we cannot answer the I think 50 others, but we will make sure also that we will forward them to the speakers. But just for now, one last question also to Tamara. So the DIN spec 91434 shows the categories for Agri-PV sites. So are these also taken up worldwide or European, or is it specifically Germany?
So a DIN spec so far is a prior norm. What we try to do with our current projects is to establish a normal DIN norm for German ground so far that can be also spread for European ground. But it's widely controversial, this topic, to classify something that is still under research, what I totally understand. But we're pushing for it because we try to give an overview of it at least. And I think, so at the moment it's only in first draft of it, I'd say, for norm. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much. I think that's it. I think, we had a great session today. As first, a really nice classification, and then some more in-depth case studies. And it was really nicely followed up by Sasha with the vertical bifacial system, with also some in-depth case studies. So I think I would really like to first of all thank the two speakers for their great contribution. As I mentioned, both the organizations will also be there at the Agri-PV event on September the 21st in Amsterdam. It will really be in the same, I would say, spirit as today. So all about sharing the experiences, giving some insights on current projects, some future outlook as well. So would be really excited to see some of the many attendees there in Amsterdam, as well as more organizations sharing their work. So for now, I would like to once more say thanks a lot, and hope to see you on the 21st. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Sasha.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Tamara.
much.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, audience. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.